USA wins 1-2-0 because we're not acknowledging a homophobic goal.
The DEI score is 1.
Hello and welcome to Expected Own Goals. We got through the groups. We're moving on edition. I'm your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. There were lots of official sources saying that the U.S. was already through after the Germany win, but I feel like there were a couple of scenarios where if the goal difference were large enough among other performances that the U.S. could theoretically have gone out had they lost to Australia. But regardless, they are through.
I think the thing that made them a certainty to go through was the third place-ness of it all. I don't think it was possible for every group to end 6-6-6, which is what it would take for a team on 6 points to get eliminated. They would need to be the worst third-place team.
Yeah, I know.
Who also had 6 points. So it was very, very difficult. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the way the match is laid out.
We don't need to get into all of that because the job is done.
Yeah, that's also an entire group stage with no draws.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. When was the last time that happened in a major tournament, I wonder?
Yeah, it's been a minute. And also the U.S. would have been through because of Canada's points deduction.
Right.
There's no way they would have been
They couldn't have
third
gotten to 6 points at all. You're right.
Yeah, there's no way.
That's...
Anywho, what a bizarre, riveting group stage. Today's game, boy, goals really help games, don't they?
Yeah, they sure do. 2-1 victory. 2-1 victory to secure all 3 points and win them the group. Only needed a draw to win the
That's
group,
correct.
Which is sort of why this game played out the way that it did in a lot of ways. And I just, there's a thing, and I sort of understand it when color commentators start critiquing the performance as though it's a game that the team on the field really not only wants to win but needs to win. And I don't know what use value that really has at the end of the day, because the U.S. rolled out a tactical game plan that very deliberately was not interested in trying to run up the score, because they didn't need to. If that game had ended 0-0, they would have won the group, and we would be in the exact same place we were with a 2-1 scoreline. Now, that being said, I think we learned a couple of things about how the U.S. deals with low blocks, which I think they do pretty well with, all things considered.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that the funny thing, for the first 44 or so minutes of the game until Rodman's goal, which is a slop goal, but a high-quality goal all the same, at least in terms of XG, but boy, is it sloppy. That said, it was almost as if Gustafsson and Hayes sat down 2 hours before kickoff and just laid all their cards on the table and had a handshake and agreed that this is how we were about to go to this game. Because there was nothing in the way Australia set up other than to invite on U.S. pressure and try to keep them out in a low block.
Well, again, for Australia's purposes, a draw would have gotten them through too. It's just about in a third place spot,
Totally. And it was Hayes' response was, okay, gonna play my starters, get some reps in against a low block that we kind of haven't seen. And so in that sense, I guess the more I thought about it, the less I am frustrated with the lack of rotation that occurred. I accept the argument that this is game 7 of the Emma Hayes era, and she has yet to really get the reps in where there's a comfort in rotating. So I'm on board with playing your starters pending some really good use of subs.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the pre-match controversy, right? Because Sophia Smith went off in the Zambia game. Trinity Rodman was grabbing her calf at the end of the Germany game. Obviously, Tierna Davidson had to pull out because of an actual real injury against Germany. Jaden Shaw hasn't played in this tournament yet. So it's a banged up group, Rose Lavelle obviously had the groin tightness right before the Costa Rica match. It would be eminently reasonable for Hayes to sit a lot of players, and that's what we talked about in the last episode. It would make a lot of sense for her to do that, try and freshen the legs, especially given the incentives. All they needed was a point to win, not only go through but win the group. So there's not a lot to be gained from going hell for leather in a match like this. Not to mention the fact that also Trinity Rodman and Sam Coffey were sitting on yellow cards. And if somebody picked up a yellow card, they were going to be suspended for the quarterfinals. So what incentives did Hayes have for rolling out an unchanged 11, but for Emily Sonic coming in for Davidson because of the injury? Well, Hayes said it in her pre-match presser yesterday, was exactly what you just said. This group just has not had a lot of time together under her. And so she felt that the risk of mitigating rust for her was more important than prioritizing rest. And I think if you don't agree with that, I think that's reasonable. And I think if you accept her position, I think that's also quite reasonable. And the only thing that they really got bitten on was the fact that Sam Coffey stepped on Katrina Jory's foot in the 3rd minute, got a yellow card, and will now sit for the Japan game. That sucks, but...
Yeah, let's circle back to that point later. We're just going to put a pin in what Sam Coffey missing means. But yes, I think there was an argument to be made for resting Rodman and Coffey and using the rest of your functional 11, or of your starting 11 from there for exactly the thing we just saw happen.
Yeah. Well, again, because... I don't know if anybody has more reason to let her gas tank fill up than Rodman does, based on A, how she's played, and B, just how much she has played in the tournaments so far. So yeah, I think if you think about the risks that central midfield opponents are, if you think about the opponents if you think about the risks that opponents' central midfields offer you, are you more concerned about Katrina Gori and Kyra Crooney-Cross, or are you more concerned about Yui Hasegawa and Fuka Nagano? I think I have my answer, and therefore I know which game I would prefer Coffey to be in.
Yeah, I think even if it were closer in my mind, I would prefer Sam Coffey available for the quarterfinals simply because you already have 6 points.
Now here's the other wrinkle to all of this. Had Coffey picked up a yellow card in the quarterfinal, she would miss the semifinal. So,
totally fair.
Is it potentially another risk worth taking to have her miss the quarters rather than the semis? Hayes would say, I'm not thinking about that. I'm taking it one game at a time. That's what you say to the press. That's what you say to your players. That is absolutely not what you're saying to your coaching staff behind the scenes. I put it to you. I mean, what do you think about that? Is it maybe worth the risk of her missing the quarters so she's there for the semis?
It's really tough. The thing is, with a tournament this size, you already sort of know what you're up against. Going into the beginning of this game, and granted, lineups have to be submitted early, but Japan had pretty handily sewed up second place in the group. That looked like it was going to be the opponent no matter what, if you won or drew this game and won the group. Knowing that Japan is your next opponent, I probably do bench Coffey. I mean, Coffey's just as likely to get a yellow card against Japan, and then you're looking at the winner of Germany-Canada at this point. And when you think about it like that, yeah, Sam Coffey's essential to have against Germany, full stop, even if she didn't have the best game against Germany. So it's 6-1, half dozen the other.
Yeah.
I am a little frustrated with Sam Coffey for going out and getting a pretty stupid yellow card almost immediately.
And it really is stupid. I mean, when you see, from a distance, before I saw the replay, I did have a thought. It's like, that feels a little harsh. That feels like a pretty clean 50-50 challenge. And then you see the replay and you just see her reach in and stomp on Gori's foot, and it's not even Gori's foot that's playing the ball. It's the foot away from the ball. So there is absolutely...
It's just a yellow.
Yeah, it's just absolutely clear as day. And one of those things where, if you were just a little bit more within yourself as a central midfielder and just take that extra second, you're probably not going to make such a rash challenge.
It's annoying from Sam Coffey, and I'm particularly annoyed because of the nature of the U.S. depth chart in the center of the park, particularly as it pertains to cover for Sam Coffey. But I'm not dying right here over the decision to play Coffey today itself. Mm-hmm. I'm just annoyed with the outcome that was plausible and then became immediate.
This feels like a roll of the dice that isn't... It wasn't stupid of you to make the roll. It just did not come up your way.
And frankly, once we get past that and we just start discussing all the buildup toward their first goal, Sam Coffey was doing the stuff that you need to see Sam Coffey doing against a low block in just the way she's able to distribute the ball back and forth. She does actually have the ability to play an incisive over-the-top ball. I get why, given the tactical inevitability of how Australia would come out, Sam Coffey was the call today. We don't have somebody else who can do the things that she can do against a low block playing her position.
Right.
We just don't. Sorry, not we. The U.S. women just don't. The U.S. women don't have a direct like-for-like replacement for Sam Coffey, and few teams in the world would. There just aren't a lot of Sam Coffeys out there. It is a statement of what she does and why she is a unique player. I think only Spain can get away with losing a 6 and having another world-class 6 right there. Mm-hmm. It just isn't it isn't easy. That said, the U.S., in their attempts to break down Australia, I thought were quite effective. They generated almost 2 XG before the half, 2 XG.
About that, yeah. I mean, the chances that I think when we talk about low blocks, and I'm writing about this in Backheel too, is that the U.S., and if you don't want to count Smith's shot before Rodman's goal, I understand. Or sorry, if you don't want to count Smith's shot before Swanson's shot right in front of Arnold's face in the 30th minute, I understand. That being said, if you do want to count it, doesn't matter. They put up either 3 or 4 shots, not just inside the box in the first half, inside the 6-yard area.
Yeah.
And none of them, if you throw Smith's chance out, if you want to call that a shot or whatever, if you throw that out, none of them were below 0.2 or 0.19 in terms of XG values. That's how you play against a low block. Well,
yeah,
that's what's going to show up at the end of that.
Yeah, they were very effective in essentially suffocating, and it was a siege, and the U.S. won the siege. Is it fun to watch? No, it's really, really bad to watch, and very frustrating if you're a U.S. fan to watch a team play a low block and just chance after chance not go through. It can be very frustrating. The counterpoint to this is, and U.S. fans, I think, probably are a little less familiar with this feeling, it is very, very stressful to watch your team try to play a low block against a better team for 90 minutes, and you feel the inevitability of losing.
I can't imagine any I can't imagine any Australian fan was feeling comfortable, especially in the first 45 to 60 minutes of this match. No. Because
very rarely, and particularly with the sort of form Australia's in, very rarely does a 5-2-2-1 or whatever you want to call this, a 5-3-2, in defense it was 2 and then 3 and then 2 in that midfield line, whatever you want to call this, very rarely does 90 minutes of that work out for you. And particularly a team that's dealing with such a talent deficit as Australia was dealing with against the U.S. I mean, Soph Smith played a little chipped ball to Mal Swanson that was onside that could have broken for a goal in the 20-something minute. Mm-hmm. There were just all of these dangerous and all these high-quality chances that were amassed in that first half.
There's in the 40th minute, there's the recycled ball after the set piece that goes back out and ends up getting crossed in to Lindsay Horan, who finishes a header that bounces off the bar. That's a 0.26 chance because she took it from 3 yards or something. The reason that chance emerges is because when the ball's getting recycled out and everybody's starting to reset, Sonnet pushes up which is hilarious. That Sonnet was basically acting like an attacking midfielder when she was playing center back. But, it's a set piece, or it's, the immediate phase of play right after a set piece. But Sonnet's there, acting like a hockey pest. Horan and Swanson both are beginning to interchange movement and just cycle themselves all along the back line and are forcing Australian defenders to make decisions. You either stay with your player, you stay zonal, you try and work in tandem, or you work individually, and all of that movement is what eventually allows for Horan to get the separation off of Alana Kennedy, because Kennedy is now paying attention to Swanson's movement behind her. It allows for help defense to not come in time, because Claire Hunt is having to deal with Sonnet's movement. And then Swanson is forcing Ellie Carpenter to stay back because she's got Swanson in front of her and Crystal Dunn behind her, and she doesn't know whether to stick or go. And you can say that that's because Australia's defense is bad. Partly that is true, but I think it's also fair to argue that the reason those situations emerge is because the U.S. is becoming so adept at making back lines break their shape, and that's what you have to do. Like in the moment like that, theoretically, you should be seeing 7 or 8 players organized behind the ball in 1 or 2 lines of very, very densely compact spacing. And that's not what Australia did in all of these big moments that the U.S. had. So for whatever frustrations you might feel about breaking down a low block, this is also the performance that you want a good team to put in against the low block. Even the best teams don't put up 5 XG against a decent low block,
Yeah, in these games, and people forget about it all the time, in these games, when these games end up 4 or 5-0, which does happen, it's usually because the low block's been beaten badly enough early enough, and then the opponent has to come out and play.
Right.
And that's when it's not just because no team would consistently play a low block if they were conceding like this. Like if they were conceding at high volume.
Yeah.
This is just a siege. And it is a type of game that we end up watching a fair amount when we watch these.
And
once the U.S.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say,
No.
In the second half, that's also how it unfolded. The second half is completely game state driven because Australia, as you say, have no choice. They need to get something from this game. They have to get a result. And so that's how the second half emerges. And especially from minute 80, 85, when the final substitution for the U.S. comes in, until the end, until final whistle, that's the one time that Australia has a little bit of a toehold in things. And that's because they're just desperate. But when everybody is trying to operate by their tactical game plan, that's what the first half represents. And it's quite clear that the U.S. outdid Australia.
I think, and I talked about this a little in the Discord, but I think Gustafsson made a critical error at halftime by not switching over and becoming more attacking and adjusting to the game state sooner. Because of the way the groups were set up and because of the sequence of games today, the Australians knew that they could not lose because the Brazilian goal differential was better than theirs.
Yeah.
So a loss meant that they would be the second place team with Canada up against Colombia, and Canada and Colombia both would supersede on goal differential. Any close game between those two teams with a Canada victory meant that they'd be bounced. So there was a knowledge that a point was actually necessary to guarantee moving forward. And I felt like a delay in the substitutions that could have happened sooner. We never saw Courtney Vine, which is madness at this point. And, we did see Emily Van Egmond.
Yeah, Emily Van Egmond comes in, but to play central midfield, and then Michelle Heyman comes in at the same time to play in place of Caitlin Torby. But that's the 59th minute, and it's
exactly
36-year-old Michelle Heyman. Whereas Vine has just been collecting, she's been in mothballs for most of the tournament.
Yeah, and And frankly, they aren't doing a much better job of controlling the field and attacking until the U.S. scores the second goal.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't committed to making this 1-1.
I'll say, I think...
I just was surprised.
I think maybe, and I could be reading into this, I don't know, but I will say that in the opening phases of the second half, anytime the camera caught Gustafsson, he did seem to cut a rather frustrated figure, specifically in like yelling at his team and doing this. What I'm doing is motioning my hands. It's the classic move of a coach on the sidelines being like, get forward, everybody move up. And I wonder if maybe he was giving that direction at halftime and his team just wasn't adjusting fast enough. But what is unassailable is that Heyman comes in the 59th, Van Egmond comes in the 59th, Vine never sees the game, and also those subs happen not at halftime. He doesn't make wholesale changes at halftime. And both of those things are on him, without question.
Yeah, it just was pretty classic conservatism from a manager in a game where, and frankly, I would have understood it if the U.S. had scored in the 47th minute, where you don't have time to sort of apply new instruction.
Right.
But the U.S. sort of gave him, if you're gonna go down to the U.S., it's sort of a gift to have it happen right before halftime as opposed to right after halftime, when you have the time to make adjustments and to like really talk to the players.
Right.
So I'm going to be critical of Gustafsson here for just leaving it too late with his team. And frankly, Australia was suddenly quite dangerous when they went full tilt against the U.S. And created the vast majority of their half-goal XG right at the end of the game.
Yeah. And also that's when they scored.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to when they scored, they were also dangerous. Yes, all of that is true. And had they snuck a result at the end of this game, which seemed entirely plausible, I don't think we'd be having a particularly different conversation. But yeah, I mean, the U.S., they escape-ish this game 2-1, having maybe not taken the most of their chances and having maybe been a little soft when Australia finally committed numbers forward. But this was largely a very comfortable 2-1.
Yeah, between the start of the second half and Corbin Albert's goal, Australia gets off 2 shots, and their sum total XG value is .096. Not even
not enough
from 2 shots.
If you desperately need a goal to advance, and Corbin Albert's goal is in what, the 77th?
That's right.
78th minute. And all you've generated is a 10th of an XG up until that point, you're just not doing enough. And some of it is just talent deficit, but a lot of it is the game plan and the approach to this game.
And even after Albert's goal, they still only managed to put up 4 shots. And, Claire Hunt's header in the 89th minute has the distance, but maybe not necessarily the angle or the approach to be pretty decent. And then beyond that, it's just Kennedy's goal, which is sort of like a half-scuffed chance that just where the pieces all kind of fall into place.
Let's move on. This game actually, I think, doesn't have a ton to break down for the U.S. just because they were very effective in beating up a low block. They were a little wasteful, but generally speaking, controlled this game.
Yeah, not even that wasteful. I mean, 0.13 XG per shot is like pretty.
No, it's good.
They're generating good chances. I guess if you mean they didn't score more, then sure, but
yeah, that's
what do you do?
That's all I mean, which is to say, yeah, no, it's classic. Like, what are you gonna? Frankly, Mackenzie Arnold could have put it into the net for the U.S. several times,
and almost did. Once again, good luck, Portland Thorns.
Yeah, Portland Thorns. Many goalkeepers, not great choices among them. It sort of feels like the Portland Thorns are doing like the Russian army thing: 2 soldiers, 1 gun. When one falls, the next one picks up and keeps running. Like it's sort of
yes.
Like that is not how one should recruit.
Exactly what the Thorns want to, how they want to see themselves at Stalingrad.
Hey, both teams wore red. I think moving forward, let's talk about sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the U.S. in this group stage. Starting with the good, maybe we can just ping pong back and forth. I don't know if you have some stuff you want to. I want to start with saying Soph Smith is just on a creative heater.
Yep.
This was a tremendous 3-game run for her. She is not leading the Golden Boot, but she is driving so much of what is working in the attack. She has been a shot monster in these 3 games, a creation monster in these 3 games, and I think is really, really making this attack hum. It's not that Trinity Rodman and Mal Swanson don't get notable mention in this. They have also been great. But Soph Smith feels like she's playing on a slightly different level. One that I think was most pronounced against Germany, but was there in all 3 games.
Yeah, Smith today generated somewhere between 0.75 and 0.88 XG on her own.
Yeah.
I mean, we commented about it a little bit during the Germany game that like her physicality and her ability to like bully defenders when she's on the ball is this unheralded skill that I don't think she really had when she was younger and has begun to develop just over the last like year and a half. That when you add that with the movement that we know she can generate, with the passing vision that she has, and then with the dribbling that is so lethal and so terrifying, she is the number 9 that this team needs. Like it's really incredible to watch. I mean, my pitch for the good was just going to say the forward line more generally, because with each passing game, the way that those 3 players are able to mix, match, just drag defenders all over creation to make space for others. And today actually was the day that I thought that Haran's like box crashing actually was fairly effective.
Yep, agreed.
Whereas I had not felt that way before, that I felt like sometimes she was getting in the way. But here, I think they just sort of were able to finally get it all timed right. And like it was a big, big additive to all of a sudden have her be something that the defense had to think about. And she wasn't clogging space anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Mal Swanson owes Soph Smith a Coke for taking a second touch on that through ball.
Big time.
But, thereby limiting the XG created by Soph Smith in this game. That said, yes, the forward line, the trident, snap, crackle, pop, SSR, I love it. I don't know, whatever you want.
I like that. Apparently, John Champion and Julie Foudy suggested triumvirate to Smith, and Smith was just like, ew, no.
Yeah, this is a woman with a Stanford education who's like, no, we will not be using that word in this place. I do know what it means, and we will not be using it. The forward line has been excellent. I also think in the good, we've got to point out Naomi Girma, who is having just a Maldini-esque Olympics.
Once again, just in the right place at the right time, even when they get beaten for pace and, backline has to recover. She's just not letting shots through. She's not giving the opposition good looks at goal.
I believe it was Emily on the Discord who shared the Opta stat that Naomi Girma completed more passes than Australia in the first half of that game. Like,
that's right.
I think it is just I think that says it all. Naomi Girma has just been, in addition to being defensively stalwart, has just been so good in distribution. Sort of every aspect of her game is really working.
Yeah.
And then I think, just generally speaking, how psyched would we be if we weren't U.S. fans about this team from a neutral standpoint? You look at the tail of the tape for what they put up in this group stage and against the opponents they did it against. And you say, "Oh shit, this is a really good team." What was it?
Yeah, I mean, they have the best goal differential in the entire tournament. They had the best XG differential in the entire tournament, non-penalty XG differential, that is. They beat Germany and beat them handily. They beat Australia, who coming into the tournament, no one thought were, pushovers.
Mm-hmm.
And they put up almost 5 XG on Zambia, and that's only been done, I believe, 3 or 4 times in a major tournament game since XG started being tracked in 2016. And I'm talking about the Olympics, the World Cup, and the Euros.
Yep.
I think it's only been done 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and
plenty of teams play minnows in these tournaments, and they're not doing that.
And you only get to play the opposition you're drawn against, but against a very decent group. 16 shots a game in the box, basically.
Yeah. 16 shots in the box.
Per game. It's that 0.15, what we have often defined as the threshold for a quality chance, as an average shot that this team is putting up.
Yeah, that's an average shot. That's the level of their chance creation. Almost 38 touches in the box per game.
Yeah, just
when the average is about 20 to 22.
This is one of the better 3-game runs we've seen from the U.S. in quite some time.
Especially in a major tournament.
Especially.
I'd have to go back and actually really crunch the numbers at this kind of granular level, but I do not think that's what they were doing last year. Especially if you take the Vietnam game out of it, that's
definitely not what they were doing.
Yeah, it's not what they were doing again in the Olympics in 2021. Even in 2019, when they were cruising and everyone thought this is like one of the greatest teams we've ever seen, they were not. I would put good money that they were not producing this level of dominance. And again, especially if you take the Thailand game out.
Yeah.
So
it's just a very impressive. It's just very impressive. It seems like kind of it's not without some notes, but like kind of everything one could hope for from Emma Hayes' first international tournament has played out on the pitch thus far.
Mm-hmm.
All of this offensive fluidity has happened. Well, on the other side of the pitch, the U.S. has conceded one very game-steady end-of-game goal and one 26-yard shot, or 22, 24, 25-yard shot.
And that's it.
That's it.
And we often forget how important... I think people often forget that it is defense that wins you knockout tournaments. And as high-flying an attack as you want to be, you got to be shut down on the other end. And they've done exactly that.
Yeah. Does this... portend a U.S. victory and gold medal? It does not, but it is good. It just, we've got a lot of tournament left to play, and now that the brackets are drawn, they won't see Spain until the final, but given the performances across all the groups, it really does look like a U.S.-Spain final is the likeliest outcome. Just in terms of raw performance.
Non-penalty XG per shot of the 2019 World Cup, 0.14, so just a hair below what the U.S. are doing right now. 32.7 touches in the box per game.
Significant.
About 5 fewer than what they're doing right now. Now, granted, that's a completed tournament with more difficult opponents in the knockouts, so the U.S.'s numbers right now, as they stand, will probably go down some. But it is also it's important to put this in perspective that right now they are playing better than they did in the World Cup in 2019.
One of the most dominant single performances a team has ever put up in a tournament. I think the bad, I would start with, we still have midfield questions, and especially with Sam Coffey missing the quarterfinal against Japan, now we really have some drop-off. From what Sam Coffey offers to anyone else, because it's probably Albert or Sonnet.
It's gonna be likely Corbin Albert. I don't think we know the status of Tiernan Davidson. So if, let's just say for the sake of argument that Davidson is available on Saturday, you could potentially put Sonnet in at number 6 to play alongside Haran. That said, a bone bruise is one of those nagging injuries that seems kind of minor because there's no ligament tear, there's no bone breakage, no muscle tear, whatever. But they can keep you off the field for actually quite some time. So the worry...
In a condensed tournament, yeah.
Yeah, so the worry is that we might not see Davidson again. And if that's the case, then Sonnet has to go play at center back because you cannot bring Emily Sams into the tournament now, except as potentially a late substitution if the circumstances present themselves. So that means, and also Hal Hirschfeld hasn't played. So it's gonna be Albert. It's gonna be Corbin Albert to start the match. And man, I do not like the idea of that when she's gonna have to be dealing with Hinata Miyazawa and Aobu Fujino.
Yeah, and let's put aside all of the other Corbin Albert stuff and just talk about Corbin Albert, the person who gave us these statistical outputs and this scouting tape it's a not particularly effective progressive passer, a not particularly effective overall passer, a not tremendously gifted possessor of the ball, playing it in essentially a single pivot at the base of this midfield against one of the most technical midfields in the world.
I think that is actually maybe the bigger concern. Like, does Hayes try and keep Horan further back and play a double pivot to give Albert, to take the pressure off of Albert? But they haven't played that way throughout the tournament. Horan has been both good and bad in this freer free 8 role that she's possessed, or this double 10 role sometimes when, you know, you're keeping Swanson wide, but Lavelle's also playing wide before Swanson drops. So, and she's crashing the box a lot. So if you leave Albert on an island, what does that do? I don't think it does anything good.
No. And for the handful of minutes that Lindsey Horan played deeper against Germany, she was responsible for some pretty critical turnovers.
She was caught out quite a bit, yeah.
And some pretty loose positioning.
So the hope that you have with Japan, we'll get into them in detail in a bit, but you have to be able to not let them play out on the counter. You have to try and continually piling on the pressure without exposing yourself too high up the field, which will be the temptation because they are going to play a 5-3-2 and keep the wingbacks at home. And they will pack, and they will use their central midfielders to really pack the center of the park to try and gum up the works. So
we did see against Australia a decent dress rehearsal for some of what Japan will try.
But Japan's better at it.
But Japan's much, much, much better at it.
Yeah.
I also think, you know, like, what is the maximized lineup in terms of if Davidson can go? I actually think you put Sonnet at the 6, and it's not much of a question.
Sure, of course.
Just because of what Sonnet offers you in terms of the ability to gum up a game and possess the ball. Like, it's not a question. Like, you want Emily Sonnet just in there laying body blows to Japanese midfielders, you know. But I doubt that's what we're going to get. That just...
Yeah, no.
It just doesn't feel likely.
Yeah. And
then you'd prefer Hirschfeld just as if just from a numbers standpoint over Albert, but that's not going to happen.
No. And she hasn't played, so there's just, you know, she doesn't have any time to bed in, and clearly that's on Hayes' mind, is getting the group comfortable. So it's Albert. It's, you know, there's no real ifs, ands, or buts about it here.
So if we finish this thought with the ugly, I think the ugly is more seriously the injury pile that the U.S. is racking up, and the intensity of the next 1, 2, or 3 games that they have coming.
Yeah.
And how little room there is for them to take on further injuries.
Yeah, because if you make it to the gold medal game, here's the path. You play Japan on Saturday. If you win, then you're playing Canada or Germany. Germany is smarting from that humiliation, and they're going to want revenge. Canada is just an awful team to play against. You're just beyond frustrating, and they did it again against Colombia. So, and then it's probably Spain in the gold medal game if you get that far. None of those games are going to be easy. Yeah. And so many players just have so many minutes in their legs. Like Lavelle has played way more than I thought she'd play. And that's probably a byproduct of Macario and Shaw being injured. I'm sure it is. But yeah, I mean, Horan hasn't gotten much rest, if any. Gurma has played every single minute. You know, same thing with Rodman. And Rodman was the one who, you know, potentially had a minor injury scare at the end of the Germany game. So it's not like these players are going to get fresher when they've got 2 days off in between these things. So what comes next? It seems like we might be actually in the clear with Lavelle, that the precautionary scratch against Costa Rica really was just that. Smith seems fine after her concerning knock against Zambia. So Rodman played well today, but it's a fatigue thing with her. Same thing with Emily Fox. and Crystal Dunn. So how do you manage all of that? I don't know, because if cohesion is so important and the games don't get easier and the games only matter more and more, it's going to be a real temptation to continually roll out the same group.
I was feeling extreme rotation envy today while watching Spain. And granted, Spain, Barcelona get to play together all the time.
Don't have to worry about cohesion there.
Exactly. But I think that the legginess that the U.S. may experience toward the end of this tournament, and just not having what appear to be a particularly deep set of players trusted by Emma Hayes.
Yeah.
I'm flagging that as a real source of the ugly. Is this could be coming down the pike, and I don't necessarily love it. It's there on the horizon, and it's a little scary.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
The other uglies are, boy, does Alyssa Nair still look like she has a Nair in her.
Oh god. Yeah. I mean, again, she was not tested very much, but they're just, there are all these little moments on the margins where, like, oh, you took a half step too late on that. Oh, you juggled that ball, but nobody was around you, so you got away with it. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to talk about was what's happened with Crystal Dunn and Jenna Neiswanger.
Oh, sure.
And that it seems now abundantly clear that Neiswanger is not preferred at left back.
And it could be a performance thing. It could be that, like, the sports science team is telling Hayes, like, she cannot go past a certain minutes threshold for risk of redlining and getting hurt, because that's why she got benched against Costa Rica, was load management. So
allegedly, yeah,
sure, and maybe that's an excuse. Although I will say Hayes was pretty blunt and honest about what she thinks of Croy Bethune right now. So, I don't know how much dissembling necessarily is going into that load management comment about Neiswanger. But all this to say, Neiswanger's not playing very much. She was substituted in late in the game. And Dunn has been fine. In fact, she was given a lot of license to get forward today, because that was going to be one of the ways you could frustrate Australia, is that Carpenter is just not a great defensive right back anymore. And she's lost a half step since returning from the ACL and has never really caught up. And so Dunn was clearly given license to test her and try and frustrate her and find seams in wide areas. And it was generally effective. But Dunn's in her early 30s and she's played a lot. And so what do you do going forward there?
Yeah, I also think that this game was, like, almost from minute one, perfectly teed up for what Jenna Neiswanger is very good at as a left back, which is creating offensive width and pinching and pressing opponents' right backs and forcing them into a series of really bad choices in a game where she has limited defensive responsibility. I thought that this was an opportunity, and I think Hayes agreed, because that was the halftime sub, to get Crystal Dunn some rest, because they'll need the Swiss Army knife that is Crystal Dunn the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But in this game, I felt like this game was built for Neiswanger to really have at, and all we got was 45 minutes out of it.
And I'm just spitballing here, but maybe Neiswanger has been Hayes' preferred first choice, and we do have to take her at her word about the load management issue. And that's also why Neiswanger was the first sub in the game and got a full 45. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. That,
totally.
So
let's move on and talk about next round opponents, Japan.
Yeah, Japan, who has had, I would say, a mixed bag of a group stage.
Agreed.
They looked anemic against Spain, a complete reversal from their 4-0 demolition back in during the World Cup last year.
Was it 4-0? I thought it was 3-0. Was it 4-0?
4, yeah. So then you look at, and then the only way they were able to beat Brazil was through a late penalty and a not to be repeated wonder strike from a 17-year-old. And then Nigeria has just been kind of depressing this whole group stage. I'm going to be honest. They have not put up much of a fight, even in the game where they did put up a little bit of fight, which was against Brazil. So to what extent can we take this very convincing 3-1 victory as a sign of things to come? I'm not so sure. I think that it's also possible that they're growing into the tournament. I think when you watch the Nigeria performance, everything that makes Japan great is present. The only problem is Nigeria does not have defenders like Naomi Girma and Emily Fox.
Moreover, Nigeria had to play an attacking style today they needed to beat Japan definitively to advance, and that played right into the Japanese hands.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I take it with a grain of salt, the Japanese performance today.
Yeah.
And I think that actually the combination of performances they put out in this group is a lot closer to their true self than a team evolving into this tournament.
Mina Tanaka had a great chance against Brazil right in front of goal. Her goal today, basically from the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
For a 30-year-old who now has to go play for the Utah Royals, she's had a nice little tournament for herself. And the thing that the U.S. has to be wary of is not overcommitting. And the thing that I think that they could be optimistic or excited about is how they attack those wingbacks. Because we've said on the bonus episodes in the past that Jun Endo being out means that they're going with not the preferred left wing back. At times it's been this 18-year-old kid, Toko Koga, who has looked defensively shaky. Riza Shimizu got hurt against Spain, and as far as I know, probably won't be available. So they're likely going with Miyabi Moria at right wing back. These players just don't have the same level of passing quality or defensive acumen that Shimizu and Endo have. And I think with the way that Rodman has been playing, with the way that Dunn played against Australia, there is weakness to be exposed out on the wings against Japan. And you know how deeply those center backs and that central midfield pairing are going to be playing in the center of the park. So how many opportunities are there going to be available to Horan and Lavelle to try and combine through the middle? And it's going to be 3v3 up front. Like every forward is accounted for by a center back.
Yep.
And those center backs are tenacious. So how much of the fluidity and interchange between Smith and Swanson and Rodman is going to be available to try and stretch Saki Kumagai or Hana Takahashi out of position? It's going to be easier if you can exploit those wingbacks and either force them to come out and step high, which they probably won't do, or if you can try and add a couple of extra numbers on the wings and force them to make a decision, and then all of a sudden space can open up for Swanson. Is it Swanson and Dunn on the left that will make a pocket for Horan or Smith to run into? On the other side, is it Lavelle and Rodman, maybe Fox if Fox is pushing up, although I wouldn't recommend that.
Nope.
to try and force Koga to make a decision, and then there's a pocket open for Smith on that wing or for Rodman to pull around. I think that's the wrinkle that will work if you're going to break down this low block. And I'm also very curious to see if Japan can keep up the level of organization that we know them for in that low block. Haven't seen it yet against really good teams yet. For me, Brazil's lack of offense against Japan had a lot more to do with Brazil than it had to do with Japan. And Spain was not flummoxed by breaking down Japan's defensive capabilities. So in addition to the potentially toughest low block that the U.S. will have seen, it's Japan's first opportunity to really try and play a low block against a team that isn't just going to try and pass you to death. So what does that look like? I think this game is a rather tasty fixture.
I agree with that. A small sample, Japan has been the third best team when it comes to non-penalty XG against in this tournament.
Yeah.
They're very good at containing almost all the XG they've given up happened against Spain.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's absolutely true.
They have yet to demonstrate their ability to really break out in the ways that they broke out against Spain in last summer's World Cup and punish you in attack. I think last summer I ended up leaving the tournament feeling like Japan was a very high floor, low ceiling team.
Mm-hmm.
And I continued to think that, and I think some of it is system wise. But if there were a team capable of springing an upset on the US in this round, when I think about draws that would have been unadvantageous to the United States of teams that didn't win their group, this is about as bad as it gets for the US, because this team really can stifle. They are very comfortable. You will not see the withering and the disorganization that we saw from Australia. This team really can sustain organizationally. The US will need to be doing what they did against Australia in the low block, which is present the threat of shooting, passing, or dribbling every time they receive the ball in attack. They'll need to continue generating as many good box chances as they can get, because these will be fewer and further between against this Japan team, who are very good at limiting opponents' shooting. I think that this is a trap game, and yes, also a tasty fixture that I still expect the U.S. to win.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder what. I mean, this sort of feels like 1-0 off a corner header to me.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah, I buy this as 0-0 in penalties. I buy this as 1-0. I also buy this as if the U.S. can get an early goal. They've gotten first half goals in every game so far in this tournament.
Yeah.
If they can get a first half goal,
then they don't need to overcommit at all.
Then they don't need to overcommit at all. And I think if I'm the U.S., I'm approaching this game with a measure of caution, but really attempting to ratchet up the pressure as the half goes on against the Japanese team. See how far you can bend to break. And this is a game we really could use Sam Coffey's passing in.
Totally. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not totally convinced on what Japan can offer going the other way, which is why a set piece header kind of feels right to me.
I also think why the inclusion of Sonnet at the 6 would make a lot of sense to break up counterattacks.
Yeah. And that will be the worry. I mean, I think what Hayes is probably going to be considering is just like to what extent those wingbacks can funnel the ball into dangerous areas, either over the top or through combining with the central mids, carve up spaces where Albert's going to be defending. They're going to want to do it quickly, and in order to do it quickly, those passes need to be really precise and sharp. And I haven't seen that yet in this tournament against sterner competition than Nigeria.
For me, the key matchup to watch in this is how Emily Fox plays and is deployed in this game.
High and wide or central and tight?
Yeah. And moreover, like, are we dealing with a situation where we're going to that asymmetric, sometimes looking like a back three with Fox on the right in attack? Or... And to what extent Fox is covering for Albert inside and also responsible on the flank. This is where I would have loved Rodman to get some more minutes on the bench. Just because the Trinity Rodman task, the knock-on task that Trinity Rodman will face in counter
defending deep on the right side
is really aggressive. But if I'm Japan and I'm thinking about where the pinch point is, I am thinking about how we can best target a probably inverted, at times, Emily Fox.
Especially if she's starting to get too high up.
Yeah. So that, to me, it seems this is absolutely a Crystal Dunn game here. This is a game where I actually, if I'm being like stupid Pep Guardiola and overthinking my way through a matchup, I might start Casey Kruger at right back.
Oh, you don't have to be Pep Guardiola overthinking it. You can be Emma Hayes overthinking it.
Sure.
This is an Emma Hayes overthinking special, potentially.
Sure. That's absolutely true. Look, I'm ready to be Chelsea'd, I suppose. I've never said that phrase in my life. and I will try to never say it again. But I'm ready for a sneaky surprise. But I think almost certainly Emily Fox is starting this game. It's just a question of her defensive responsibility. I think if Japan fails to generate very much down their left flank, down past Emily Fox deserves a lot of credit for simply containing in a game like this, because she's going to be asked to do a ton.
Yeah.
So you think U.S. wins this?
Yeah, 1-0. 1-0 feels right. I'm not sure if it's normal time or added time, but yeah, I think a 1-0 feels right.
I think the U.S. has been clicking along so much that I'm not going to let my skepticism step in here. I think that this one's maybe more like 2-1, 3-1.
All right.
I just feel like the U.S. has been so difficult to contain, and Japan looked so mediocre against Spain.
And I think, again, you don't forget that most of the U.S. is going to have a height advantage on set pieces, which is why I'm sort of coming back to that idea.
Yeah.
That
no, I totally get your point there.
Yeah, like maybe their defense really does completely stymie the U.S., and the U.S. does the same thing on the other side and don't allow counterattacks, but they've just got 2, 3, 4 inches on most of the Japanese players. And so, well-timed corner kick, boom, it's over.
Yeah. Boom. You did a classic Jurgen Klopp. Boom. Lindsey Horan, your aim has just been yay high on all of your headers so far. Just a little bit lower. And you know who needs to get their headers on frame? Expected own goals.
All the time.
All the time.
If you're not subscribed to our Patreon, guys, we're having a blast over there. Lots of fun on the Discord, chatting with people. Bonus episodes have been really fun. We are planning another live watch along. I don't know if it's going to be the quarterfinals because it's going to be a 6 a.m. Pacific kickoff for us. That's going to
I'm down, Evan.
We'll maybe talk off mic about that. But there will be one at some point, especially if the U.S. moves on. And even if they don't move on, I think we're planning on doing something for the gold medal game. So you can have all of that for the low, low price of $6 a month. It's a fun community to be a part of. We would love for you to join us. You can also sign up for our free newsletter, where I've been pumping out like fun stats of the tournament, every round of the tournament, some funky numbers that don't always anticipate until I'm actually writing the thing. So that's been cool. You can sign up over at xog.behive or beehive with 2 eyes.com. And that's completely free. We're not charging for that. And you can follow us on all of our social media channels at XOwnGoals. That's the letter XOwnGoals, including Blue Sky and YouTube, which is where these live streams will be living for our members only at the moment.
And another great reason to sign up for the Patreon, we're going to be talking about in our bonus episode for our members every other part of the knockouts that's coming up. And that episode will be up and loaded right as you finish listening to this one. So please consider, look, you can always cancel, but if you're going to get in now. This is the Deep Lying Playmaker level has been something we're thrilled about. Those who've already signed up, the numbers, you've already exceeded our expectations for this. Modest expectations, modest hopes. You've really blown us away. And we would love to have more of you there and participating in what has been one of the most enjoyable and really operating at a high level conversations about soccer. It's really been essential for my own watches of these games, and that's all I can hope for. So sign up, listen. Bye.